Well, hello and welcome to the Alpha Anywhere demo and Q&A webcast for Wednesday, July 25th, 2018. My name is Dave McCormick. I'm VP of Product Management here at Alpha Software. And today we have a slightly different format than before. Dion McCormick, who is usually here, is out. He's on an airplane actually flying up to Alpha headquarters. He will return with us next week. But we have Sarah Mitchell on the line, who's in charge of documentation and has agreed to take over the beginning part of Dion's presentation quickly. But then she has something else that's interesting to show off, and that is the new features in the newest release of Alpha Anywhere. We also have Christopher Martin on the line, who's our solutions engineer here, who will be here to answer your questions as well. And this is a questions-driven session, so please, if you could share your questions by submitting them into the questions box of the GoToWebinar control panel, that would be awesome. So let's start off here with Sarah. Hello, Sarah, are you there?
I am here. Can you hear me?
I sure can. Let me go ahead and make you the presenter so we can see your screen.
Okay, where is it? All right.
There it is, and I can see your screen.
All right, great. So I guess I'll just jump into this. Dion was going to talk more about API stuff today. So we've got some slides here we can go over briefly before we can talk about a few other things in the recent release that was released 2 days ago. So let me get here. We go. So Alpha Anywhere, with the release of 4.5.4 and 4.5.3, added some new capabilities around consuming and publishing web APIs. So consuming would be consuming a service such as Google Maps or Salesforce, or anybody has created something for you to retrieve data from their data system, like the weather service. And then publish is creating your own and adding your own API for your application out there on the net for other people to consume. It includes support for security, both when you're consuming and publishing your own APIs. Swagger. That's a Dion title. I think he is doing a play on Marsha, which has something to do with the TV show I'm not familiar with. And but we'll talk about that briefly, about what does that actually mean, and then some brief overview of the consume functionality and the publish functionality that we've got in Alpha Anywhere. So consume and publish. As I mentioned before, Alpha's latest release supports both consuming web services and publishing web services. And we've added some built-in features that not only make it easy for you to create and consume services, but generate some documentation around your own APIs. Or if in the case of Swagger, I believe if you're consuming one, you can generate doc yourself. And in this last statement, the process has been simplified and enhanced in that instead of having to do all this by hand now, we have some builders that help you out. Security support, as mentioned before, we have not only the ability to integrate services that require authentication like OAuth or some sort of basic authentication for that service, but you can add your own security that either queue off of a third-party service that you've integrated, maybe use Facebook or OpenID, but also using the Alpha Anywhere application, the Alpha Anywhere security framework. And what that allows you to do is require somebody be authenticated, have proper credentials to access part or all of the API that you've built yourself. And that just helps to make sure that people are using your API that you want to use it. But the other thing around that's nice around having authentication is that you can control who is accessing and know who is accessing, as opposed to just having it out there and letting everybody hit it. And this is that Swagger, Marsha slide.
Millennials just don't know about Brady Bunch, I guess.
No. Oh, Brady Bunch. That was on TV Land.
Yeah.
So Swagger, what is Swagger? So something we did to make it easy to create your own API and put it out there is we had support for generating a Swagger API based off of your API. And Swagger, or as they're now moving towards, Open API is the name they're moving towards. It's a specification for documenting your REST API. It specifies the format of the URL, the methods, the representation. It describes it as a REST service. It also provides Swagger, the service itself. They have tools to generate and compute documentation from the definition, which it's not going to document what your functions do, but they have a well-defined format for documenting your API that can then be used to generate an HTML page that people can read and learn how to use your API. And also, the other cool thing that they have is they have this ability to create and generate a service for testing your API, like online, just sending it test information and getting it back. So as mentioned before, Swagger, it's a standard for documenting the web API. It's an industry standard. It's very, very popular. They have a built-in capability for auto-generation of code, which we support by generating a Swagger definition for you. But that auto-generation of code isn't just generating help information, but Swagger has this really cool tool where you can generate a client SDK for another platform. So you can take your Swagger definition up to Swagger site and generate an SDK for somebody who has, maybe they want to use JavaScript or HTML or C# to call into your API. And their tool generates not only all the C# code required to make those calls, but also a helpful set of documentation around that C# API that is useful for others. So about consuming, we do have some pre-made API integrations, some basic samples that show you how to integrate with other platforms. We also directly integrate with Salesforce through a bunch of XBasic functions that have been added. We have Twilio and SparkPost. We have Alpha Transform, which I added that mention there. You can consume transform data into your Alpha Anywhere applications and also send it back out. And of course, you can always roll your own API integration. And we've got some tools in there now that make that easy, and more coming down the road around REST API that are going to make things even more awesome. And then publishing. We have a way to generate test pages for you from Alpha Anywhere to test your API to make sure it's creating or sending back the responses you expect. It's based off of XBasic classes, but you can also integrate, I believe you can also integrate Node in there as well if you decided you wanted to write it in Node. It's very easy to automate and deploy these things. And of course, we've got security built in, so you can add your own authentication methods to verify that users are who they are before you give them anything back from your API. So next steps, what can you do beyond these, the 8 slides that we've just talked about to move forward before we get into the nitty-gritty things next week, I believe, and start showing you how to create your own services, publish them, and then consume them. So you can learn more about Swagger and OpenAPI at swagger.io. It's a cool site. It's not required that you have a deep understanding of what Swagger is to use it. We abstract that away from you. We abstract that information away from you. You don't. We don't even get into the. We don't even deal with Swagger in Alpha Anywhere. We actually have our own little API set up there that we've got. The latest alpha release has all this functionality, so you can download the latest release, which was released 2 days ago, to get this stuff in there. We have stuff on in the documentation site, www.alphasoftware.com/documentation. There's REST API is a term you're going to want to search for. And there's also a sample SOAP service that we've built and shipped that shows you how to create your own sample SOAP service for others to consume. And then stay tuned for our next installment of Year of the API. So that is the short, really short presentation, 10 slides that Dion left us.
Excellent.
I don't have anything to demo for you guys, unfortunately, around this.
Right, but that's to launch us
Yeah.
into next week
Yep.
presentation, so he can take us directly into all the cool
Mhm.
stuff. Sarah, thanks very much for going through that. Those
You're
resources
welcome.
look like
And
they're
just
quite useful.
creating
Uh,
REST APIs, this
mhm,
doc page up there is awesome. We've got lots of videos that can walk you through this whole process up in documentation.
Fantastic.
I definitely recommend that.
Yeah. You have a quick question here from someone in the audience, and they're asking, what's the difference between SOAP and a REST API?
Besides the words.
Right, besides the words.
Oh, I should have researched this before getting up here.
All right.
So let's just figure it out. Let's go look at SOAP. SOAP Web Service Clients. All right. All right, so the difference between SOAP and REST is SOAP is a little bit older than REST. REST is new. It's a representational state transfer. It operates over HTTP calls, put, get, post, delete, put, send data up, get, pull data down, post. Post and put are similar. I can't remember the difference. And then delete is a delete acronym to delete it data.
It is an
SOAP
older
is a
format, and
standard
you'll.
that uses
Mhm.
HTTPS to make those calls. So it's just a different format. It can return XML or JSON. I
Yeah,
believe the two most popular.
yeah. So
Yeah,
with SOAP, XML is the most popular. With REST APIs,
it's
it can be mixed, but people are
mhm.
beginning to prefer to use JSON because it's an easier file format to deal with and to parse.
Yeah, yeah. And
So
SOAP is
we
used over
strongly advise
HTTPS.
JSON.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah.
Right.
JSON for sure.
Cool.
And I mean, if you get a service that's coming back in XML, we have lots of functions and built-in capabilities that make it very easy to translate between XML and JSON. I have a short 2-line script that will process an XML file and produce a JSON file, and I'd be happy to share that at some point. So
Great.
that you
Excellent.
guys, yeah, it's really simple. We've made it
Yeah.
really easy to go to JSON from XML.
Great. So
Yeah.
someone is looking for a documentation link, probably starting at just APIs in general, web services. So if you could paste that into the chat window, that would be awesome.
Yeah, so I'm going to give you guys 2 links. One, also, if you guys ever get links in documentation, use the 3-dot icon because that gives an unbreakable link to you. If I
A
decided to come in here and rename
permalink.
this or move it, it will still find it, which we've run into issues in the past with things moving around. So let's see the chat window. So this is web service clients for connecting to SAP and SOAP web services. The other one, creating REST APIs, is that's creating your own API for your application and putting things out there. Here's that second link. So that's if you come into guides and you're like, oh, I can't remember where it was. It's users guide services, and everything is in here, including some other stuff around CouchDB APIs and um, creating a service endpoint.
Yep.
Yeah.
So those were just placed into the chat window of the GoToWebinar
Mhm.
control panel. Some implementations of GoToWebinar don't have a chat window. If that's the case for you, send off an email to guides, GUIDES, at alphasoftware.com, and I'm happy to get you those links.
Mhm.
So, do you want to try to, sorry, not try to, but you want to jump now into the release notes for the latest official release?
Yes. So
Excellent.
the latest official release, released on July 23rd, 2 days ago, is 4.5.4.5. And just as an FYI, if you use the image upload feature, we had a small goof in there, there's a little bug, but you can fortunately download a hotfix for that and apply it and you're good to go. So 4.5.4.5 is, this release is 2 months after 4.5.4.4 or 3. I forget where we were at. So there's a few new features in here you might not know about. So we'll go through it real quickly. We added some hotkeys. We added F2 key to rename a file or command, and F2 is consistent with Windows File Explorer, Windows Explorer in the file system, you hit F2 to rename a file. So we added that in. I imagine that came in from a user wanted to just a quick way to do that instead of having to right click and select rename file. We made it easier to add try-catch blocks around your action JavaScript. So a try-catch block is it's a way to capture issues. Maybe you accidentally wrote something assumed a variable exists and it doesn't, and now you've created like an exception, and the exception gets thrown. Then you get this pop-up message that says, "Oh, there's an error at this web page. Do you want to continue?" What a try-catch block lets you do is you say, "All right, I want to try this I'm going to try this functionality. I want to do it." If something goes wrong, the catch block is called, and then there you can capture that error message wherever it came from and say, "Oh, like I need to post a message to the user," or maybe you expect that to happen in certain situations and you don't want anything to happen. You don't want it to interrupt the user and you don't want them to know about it. So then you can just continue with the regular workflow and move on. So we've added that into Action JavaScript. It's pretty cool. Try-catch blocks are great. I use them in XBasic all the time. It's actually called on-air go-to, not try-catch. So on-air go-to in XBasic, try-catch in JavaScript. And this adds a very easy way to add that in there so you guys can have robust functions, out there in scripts and providing a better user experience. Along the vein of APIs, there's a Swagger API test page. You can make one of these now when you create a custom API using Alpha Anywhere's built-in capabilities. The test page is super cool, and I really want to show you guys what that looks like. So I'm going to turn on my development server and see if
live
I can pull
demo.
it up.
Excellent.
Yeah. So earlier I was doing this and all the bugs should be worked out by now because everything was basically wrong. So it's working. But this is that auto generation documentation and test stuff that I was telling you about. And this page is interactive. It shows you the base URL of where the service is located, how you would call it right here, this live preview my sample service, et cetera, et cetera. There's a try it out button you can click and execute, and if all goes well, down here you will not see definition file could not be parsed. You would see the actual return value from your function. So something's missing. I have to go back and republish something. It's probably just my, what was the note I made earlier? It's probably just my Swagger file or something like that is missing. So, but this shows you error details, what happened, how you would call it on the command line with a curl if you wanted to provide that for somebody else. And this default would list everything you had. So I only have one method that's exposed in my API, but if I had 30 or 40 exposed, they'd all be here, and it would show you if it was a get or a post or a delete. So that's super cool. So that with that release notes, that Swagger API test page option, that's what this page is. It's the test page.
How do you use that, or how do you call that from within the software? I guess I'm missing that one part. Like, so you're back working in Alpha Anywhere, presumably creating or consuming some sort of Swagger service, and then.
Yeah. So yeah, I'll just make one, or
what's the integration? Yeah.
Let's
Thanks.
go look at my fantastic workspace. Close. So, oh good, it's already filtered. Web services, I've got this my sample service. It's based off of an XBasic class I created.
Okay.
And down here, there's, I think it's live test API. We'll open this page for you.
Yep.
Yeah.
So that's how you get there from within Alpha. That's cool.
Yeah.
Nice.
I wonder if I can just go straight to that. Nope, I can't. Okay. So it takes you here. And that, I don't know why my methods aren't in here. Anyway, that's what that live test is. And those, not only can you live test, but you can generate the Swagger definition, which you could then take over to Swagger's website and create a, oh my gosh, I just want to show you guys everything. Swagger, editor at swagger.io. If you go here, editor.swagger.io, they have a basic one here. But if you take that definition here and then go to this generate client dropdown, these are all of the client SDKs you can generate. So you would paste, you would come in here, you would clear the editor, you would paste your Swagger definition in here. You would want to make sure to replace these curly brace things with the actual host. So like www.alphasoftware.com would be the host, the base path, which is everything after the host. And then the scheme, is it HTTP or HTTPS? And that's what goes in here. And then you can generate these clients and download them and ship them off. You can get your C#, your JavaScript. You can even do like a TypeScript node export and send that to somebody who's written their site in TypeScript and wants to call into your API. That's what's really powerful and very, very useful to do that.
Cool.
Yeah. Okay. So Swagger test page. Again, that's in the new file dialog. Small updates to JavaScript charts. We expose the x-axis label angle, so you can angle your x-axis labels.
Very nice.
The expanding menu control now has above menu HTML and below menu HTML. And I might actually have an example of that sitting around in here somewhere. Oh, I bet it's this one. So above menu HTML and below menu HTML are, it's just HTML, but it is rendered above and below the expanding menu itself, which is actually pretty cool. You could do something like maybe you want to put your logo above it and some footer information below. And this lets you package it all up in one control that's easy to keep track of. And as a side note, there is a property called below menu color. And that's this orange color, and it not only does the below menu HTML pick it up, but the above menu HTML picks it up as well. So you can set that separately without having to code it into the HTML itself. But beyond that, everything is either create a class that's referenced by your HTML or define it within that code block to style that stuff in those sections.
Gotcha.
If you could never remember where you wrote that JavaScript or added that action JavaScript for something in your UX component, there is a new option in the drop-down menu that says, it's called Show Summary of All JavaScript Code for Event Handlers, and this just generates this JSON object that tells you what the name of the object is and what the code in that event is. So here you see container 1 abstract click, and the code is alert container click. Abstract click is the click event. If it said on click, it would be the on click event. So it says as a note. But that makes it easier to figure out where you put stuff if you're looking for something specific.
Not only that, it helps you figure out where someone else put stuff. Actually, we should credit Chris Martin with helping us come up with this feature. As you know, Chris is a solutions engineer here at Alpha, and often he'll take over a project that maybe someone didn't quite complete or whatever. And one of the things about Alpha is that there are lots of different ways of doing things, and there's lots of different places where you can attach code. So you may have code on a button, but you may have it, or on certain different events, on particular objects. I mean, there's literally thousands of places that you can attach code. So when something happens on the screen, when you see some sort of behavior and you're trying to figure out, all right, what code just fired for that to happen, it became a fairly challenging endeavor to go through, and you come up with the best guesses about what the developer was thinking. But this really makes a great job of taking out all of the code that they've attached to all of the objects and just showing you exactly where it is. So it really takes the guesswork out of it. So I know Chris is on the line with us. Have you had a chance to test out that feature yet, Chris?
No, I have not had a chance to test it out yet because I'm not running on it.
Oh, okay. Well, let us know. So
I will.
That's all you.
I will, and I'm also looking at this on the screen right now, and maybe we can come up with a little friendlier interface.
Yeah, don't you think? Besides just the JSON, I mean, it's
Yeah.
readable, but it would be great if it was also searchable or listable or I don't know, something nice.
Exactly. So we'll probably come up with an interface that
Yeah.
you can run around this, that you can paste it into, and
A little templating would help. Yeah.
Yeah.
Great.
yep. And then after we create that, maybe someone can throw that back into the app.
Yeah, exactly. Perfect. So what's next?
What's next? You can add a custom sort order on reports that are embedded in a project now. This is a new feature. You specify the sort fields on how to sort it. And a report embedded in the UX would be the report is rendered in the web page, like in a div or an iframe or something, as opposed to popping up in a new tab or prompting you to open it in another application like Adobe Reader. Yeah.
Whereas
Yeah.
frequently sort order was specified just at the report level, but here you can say run this report, and in this case I want it sorted that way, that kind of thing.
Yeah. So
More
like
control.
there's another action to run a report, and it's got significantly more settings in it than I believe this one does. So unfortunately, I haven't really dug into this one very much yet
Okay.
to really give you guys a good idea of what's going on.
But there it is.
And then a really exciting feature, actually I think there's two exciting features.
Oh yeah, this is a good one, right? For people building mobile
Loading
applications.
files onto an app in offline applications. Looks like we've added a new JavaScript function that lets you do that. Excuse me.
Right.
On demand, on your own,
Yep.
on your own terms, as opposed to automatically.
Yeah, I was just talking with our chief designer Selwyn about this exact project, and we were pointing out that yeah, sure, today if you're using PhoneGap, your list controls and stuff can take advantage of the file system. They can take advantage of all the space that's on the phone, not just that small amount that's given to a web browser. But there are times when you go into the field that customers have come to us and said, look, I'd love to have either a short like little video that shows how something is done, like how a piece of equipment is repaired, or I'd like to see a series of photographs of different parts of a machine. This just happened to be for manufacturing, but the key was they didn't actually have Wi-Fi, so it all had to work offline. So now with this new JavaScript action, we've made it actually really easy for you to just choose whatever files you want to accompany your application with you on the phone by using this. So you can put in SQLite databases, you can put in videos, you can put in large categories of images or anything like that, and it'll be stored in the file system along with the application. You can then reference it from the client side.
Yeah, I think this is just JavaScript. I don't think it's a JavaScript action or action JavaScript.
Right. At this point, correct.
We already have built-in way to do it with the SQLite databases. This just allows you to extend it to zip files or whatever. Yeah. And we also have added a way to unzip files on PhoneGap as well. So if you download a zip file, you can now expand it on the device, which is, you want things to be as compressed as possible during download so you're not waiting forever. And I know in some like iOS, if your application takes too long to load, it actually will halt loading it. So minimizing the amount of data you download up front or reducing its size in general. This is a good way to.
Right, and a lot of these databases are, we can do that now with SQL Server, are not really that efficient in terms of space usage. So they compress very well. The example that we saw the other day was a 100 megabyte database being shrunk down to 20 megabytes, and that's a big difference when you're talking over a cell phone line. So,
yeah.
Yep.
Looks like we added functionality to prevent tabbing out of a modal window using the tab or shift tab keys. And also the ability to constrain tabbing to a specific container. So within a specific panel card or frame. You got some third-party plugin features for Cordova. Oh, and this is the other thing that's really, really exciting that we added instant update channels. So a channel can be thought of as like a branch on your application, a different version. You can have your main channel, which is what's out there, and then you could create a testing channel where you're trying some experimental features. And with instant update, we've added the ability to specify which channel you want to use. Do you want to use the main one, the default one, which everything has a default channel, or do you want to use a different one? And that choosing a different channel dictates like where those update files are downloaded from. So if you add this to your feature to your applications, you can now open up the idea to users to beta test your software before you ship it out to everyone, or have a way to beta test your software before shipping it out to everyone using instant update.
Cool.
So that covers it for most of the features in this release over the last 2 months. And there aren't a lot, but there's quite a bit of stuff in there that actually was added.
That is excellent.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, let me go take a look through for questions and see what we've got here. Here is a design question, and I think if maybe you or Chris could handle this. If not, I have already forwarded it along to our development team, in which case I'll get everyone the answer next week. But here's the question. It says, I'm creating, so he's creating a browser grids with large database. So he's using a grid component, and the performance is excellent. But when he uses the same large database with a UX, it's very slow and almost unresponsive. Is there a way to open the app and not fetch the records? And when you do fetch the records, fetch just a few at a time. Is there a way to set up the list to handle that kind of situation?
Yes.
Okay.
And I will show you.
Excellent.
Yeah. I'm not good at talking and doing at the same time, so.
All right. You do, I'll talk, and then tell me.
Suffer through the silence.
So you built a new UX control, and in it you are adding a list.
Mm-hmm. And I'm
this
going to,
list
just to give it some
going-
data here.
Going against SQL, and you've used the Northwinds demo as the data source. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And in particular, you've chosen the customer table, and you've selected all the fields in the customer table. So if you were to run this, I guess I'd expect to see a list which
Correct.
has,
Oops.
oh, you got to actually set up the
Back
layout, right?
the list.
Yeah.
Good enough.
Okay, good. Yep.
Right. So yeah, okay, the question.
Working preview,
so,
here's the list. Loading.
All right.
There it
so
is.
This is everything.
Yeah. And it wasn't too bad, but this is a small database.
No, it's a small database, but pretend there was 1 billion records and we're still waiting for it to load.
Right.
So with the list control by default, if you don't somehow constrain the amount of data that's downloaded, it will pull everything from your database, which in offline applications is not going to work out well for you, because if you're only using local storage, you only have 5 megabytes of data available to you to store all this information, and 1 million records is probably going to exceed that pretty quickly. So what you need to do is in your list, give it a search part. And in here in the search properties, there's a delay populate list till active search. So what you would want to do, one way you can solve this problem, I should say, is you can prevent downloading any data until the user has explicitly searched for something.
Oh, okay.
That's one way you can do this. There are other ways to accomplish this, such as I think there are other ways you can do this. Well, that's the best way. That's the best way. Delay search until active search.
Gotcha.
You can require that the user searches it themselves, or you can trigger the search programmatically, and maybe hide those search controls from the user.
Gotcha.
Yeah, so like if I go in here now and I'll create, so I clicked on the search part, quick setup Genie here to create some controls for the search. Add buttons. Okay. Let's just search everything. Or Let's search country, wrap it in a container. This is going to add my search fields for me. And there are my search fields. So now if we went in here, excuse me, wait for it to render. There's nothing here in the list until I search for something. And now so I entered Spain in for my country and then I hit search, and now this is going to give me just the 5 records for Spain because there's only 5 in my database.
Excellent.
Mm-hmm.
Let me see what else we've got here for questions.
Can you click on the button search for a second?
The button search?
Yeah.
Like back in the,
yeah,
or this
yeah,
one?
Yeah.
That guy?
Yeah, where's the code for that? Did you do
It's in the click event. Do you want this?
Okay, so where it says auto, if you change that to client side, it will only search on the client side. So if you did have a whole bunch of data and you understood that it's going to take time to download it, you can still do the wait until you do an actual search, but then you just search on the client side once the data is downloaded.
Yes.
If you set it to auto, it'll automatically, I believe, go back to the server, which will not the way you want it if you disconnect it. I learned that the hard way.
Yeah, so so there's 2 types of searches. There's the search that pulls the data from the server back to your device, and then there's a search that's local to the device. And the easiest way to get either one of those search buttons is in the defined controls list search part buttons. So there's a submit search, and oh, maybe you can't do it here.
I always did it by hand over there.
You always did it by hand?
Change that one value.
I do know that we do this also through Action JavaScript.
Because sometimes people don't understand that it's going to take a while to download that data in a list, and and they want to go disconnected with that list afterwards. So.
All right, so filter records and list control, Action JavaScript does a server-side search. If you want to do a client-side search, that's one of the list control actions in the list control actions. So we'll go take a look at that one. That references this one, list control actions. And in here, there should be a client-side search. Here we go. Oh, they're both here. So filter list client side only searches the data on your device. Filter list server side pulls new data down.
Cool. Excellent. So I'm not seeing a ton more questions to address in this session. If I've missed your question, do send one to guides@alphasoftware.com. So if that's it, I'll give you guys another minute or so, but we will be wrapping up shortly, I believe.
I did want to show something off.
Oh, okay.
Hey, Dave, do we want to talk about the upcoming DevCon? Are we still accepting reservations on that?
We are still accepting reservations, although it is filling up really quite fast. That's actually a great point. Sarah, would you take us over to alphasoftware.com/devcon2018? I know most of
20.
yeah, no, I hope that.
Oh dear. There we go.
I know I'm looking for
what version. What 2018? Yeah.
I'm looking forward to seeing Mickey Mouse. We're gonna have him there, right?
Mickey Mouse will be down the street, I believe. Actually,
Oh,
this is near a Disney property. This is a beautiful venue. It's actually a short, free shuttle ride from the Orlando airport to the hotel, and it is a shorter session this year. We are doing 1 day of training, but that training is going to include not only Chris Martin and not only Dan McCormick, but also Selwyn Rabins, and I believe Dan Bricklin will be there as well. So it's really going to be a super awesome, hands-on, intensive 1 day training session the day before, followed by 2 days of presentations and presentations, examples, workshops, and all kinds of awesome things that'll be happening there at DevCon. There's still some introductory pricing available for this. It's going to go up to full price very shortly because we're coming up on it pretty close to now. So if you're interested, you can go to alphasoftware.com/DevCon 2018, or you can also send an email to our sales department, sales@alphasoftware.com, and they'd be happy to get you started there. Great. So thanks for reminding me, Chris. Appreciate that.
no problemos.
Yep. Oh, here's a question, and I know also, Sarah, you wanted to show something off, but let's see if we can address this question first, which is, where is the expanding menu control? So can you talk just a little bit about this control? Because you showed us a new feature in it, but can we see it just in general?
Great question. So the expanding menu control is data control, and data controls are like text box, text area, drop down button, radio button, checkbox, et cetera, et cetera. Over time, this list has gotten quite long. So as we add new controls, they're going into this more section down here.
More.
Data controls, more. And if you open this up in here, you will find the expanding menu, and then you can add that.
Now, not a lot of people know this, but I believe that you can actually create your own control types, although it's a little tricky because you're going to write a little bit of alpha code to define the genie for building out the control. And then, of course, you have to write the JavaScript and stuff behind the control itself. But if there's something that you really think would be super cool and is missing, well, first of all, send us an email because maybe we'll just add it for you. But if it was something really particular to you, you want to add your own control type, you could do that.
Yeah, you can add them all. Yeah, but it does require you know how to write Xdialog,
Xdialog,
JavaScript,
right.
and XBasic, and HTML, and possibly style sheets. So, yeah. Okay.
All right, so there is that's how you find it, and the control itself. When you dig down into its properties, let's see.
It's got a control properties.
Okay.
Similar to like the form view ViewBox list control.
Settings. Maybe creating your own custom one will be a nice little topic for the pre-training.
Ooh.
It's an advanced thing. If you know, it's pretty advanced stuff.
Guru level. Well, that would be not in this training, but yeah, we'll look into it if there's some interest.
Maybe that will be sitting around the lounge in the after hours, and we'll
exactly.
Yeah, we do have some information on how you make a custom control starting with the ViewBox, which is a good place to start if you want to start getting into those things. So.
Super, excellent.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that looks like it. Again, if we didn't get to your questions, send them to guides@alphasoftware.com. Thank you very much for joining us today. Next week, Dean will be back with us, and he'll be continuing the Year of the API series, which I believe he's going to show you how to consume APIs using Alpha Anywhere. But we're also here, as always, to answer your questions, so please send them in. Thank you, everyone, who attended. Thanks to those who asked questions, and to you, Sarah, and to Chris. And,
One more thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, sure,
Just so you know, if you're wondering on documentation, guys, we finally exposed this. You're going to start seeing tags on examples that tell you what that language is. So it'll say JavaScript or it'll say XBasic.
That's handy.
Yeah, so I just wanted to mention that. Somebody asked a while back, how do I know if I'm looking at JavaScript or XBasic? And it will say JavaScript or XBasic as we filter it out. Yeah.
Oh, good to know. Thanks very much.
Yep.
Well, we'll hopefully see all of you back here next week. Take care. Have a great week. Bye-bye.